My sister-in-law faked car accident injuries to manipulate my husband, but I caught her on camera. Now she's in jail for fraud. I never expected to be spilling my heart out on Reddit, yet here I am, desperate for advice and support. I'm Nancy, 28F, and I'm currently dealing with my husband's family, notably his sister Jenny, 32F. Jenny and I have always had a rocky relationship, but recent events have pushed things to breaking point. To provide some context, I met my husband Warren, 30M, at a mutual friend's Halloween party 5 years ago. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was dressed as Wonder Woman, and he arrived as Clark Kent. We spent the entire night conversing in a secluded nook, ignoring the craziness of the party around us. We hit it off right away, bonding over our mutual love of hiking, photography, and 1980s movies. I had never felt such an instant connection with anyone before. We chose to marry after 2 years of dating, which included weekend escapades, nice movie nights, and the occasional disagreement, typically about Warren's habit of leaving his socks everywhere. Our wedding was a small, personal celebration in a rustic barn, attended by close friends and family. That was when I first met Jenny. Jenny made it apparent from the moment we met that she did not like me. She arrived late for the rehearsal dinner in a white outfit that looked strangely bridal. During her toast, she spent more time reminiscing about her childhood memories with Warren than wishing us success in our marriage. She even accidentally poured red wine over my outfit during the reception. At the time, I put it down to wedding day stress and attempted to dismiss it. Jenny's behavior intensified over the months. She would make disparaging remarks about my work as a freelance graphic designer, hinting that I was not talented enough for her brother. "Oh, you're still doing that little drawing thing?" she'd ask with a condescending smile. "I thought you'd have found a real job by now." Each comment seemed like a small knife, eroding away at my self-esteem. Warren is from a close-knit family, and he has always been protective of Jenny. Jenny's parents died in a vehicle accident when she was 18, leaving her to raise Warren alone. She put her goal of becoming a nurse on hold in order to support her family with 2 jobs. I understand and admire their bond, but Jenny uses it to control Warren and disrupt our relationship. The first serious incident happened on our first wedding anniversary. Warren and I had planned a weekend retreat to a quiet mountain chalet, where we had spent our first trip together. I had been looking forward to it for months, planned hikes, picnics, and even a surprise candlelight dinner beneath the stars. Jenny called Warren in tears 2 days before we were about to depart, saying she was going through a difficult breakup and needed her brother's support. Warren, being the compassionate guy he is, proposed that we postpone our trip to be present for Jenny. I was disappointed, but I understood the circumstances. After all, family comes first, right? However, when we got to Jenny's house, we discovered her laughing and drinking wine with her friends. There were no signs of a split or sorrow. When I asked her about it later, she dismissed it, claiming she was simply feeling low and needed some companionship. "You wouldn't understand, Nancy," she murmured patronizingly, patting my arm. "Warren and I share a special bond. Sometimes I just want my lil' brother around." Warren saw nothing wrong with it, but I couldn't resist the suspicion that Jenny had purposefully thwarted our intentions. Jenny's intrusion into our life increased in frequency and severity over time. She would pop up unexpectedly to our place, usually on date nights or when Warren and I had scheduled some quality time together. She once interrupted a romantic supper that I had spent hours preparing. "Oh, did I interrupt something?" she inquired innocently, before settling into our couch and putting on the television. She would phone Warren at weird hours, claiming to have various emergencies that always seemed to be resolved by the time we arrived. One night, at 2 a.m., she called to report a gas leak in her apartment. We rushed over, only to find her quietly watching a movie, saying the scent had vanished just before we arrived. The problem came to a climax last month at Warren's 30th birthday celebration. I had spent weeks preparing a surprise party for all of Warren's friends and colleagues. I even managed to fly in his best friend from college, Mike, whom he hadn't seen in years due to their locations on separate coasts. The celebration was in full swing, with everyone enjoying the catered cuisine, open bar, and the presentation of Warren's life that I had painstakingly created. Jenny arrived an hour late, crashing into the living room while evidently intoxicated. She was holding a large gift box covered in glittering gold paper, and she proudly stated that she had the nicest present for her newborn brother. The room went silent as she demanded everyone's attention. The box contained a set of keys. Jenny proudly announced that she had purchased Warren a classic car he had long desired, a 1967 Chevrolet Impala, the very kind his father used to drive. I felt my heart fall. My own gift, a homemade picture album recording our relationship and a weekend vacation to his favorite camping spot, fell short in contrast. The room fell silent as all eyes went to Warren. I could see the conflict on his face. He was definitely moved by the gesture, but he was also concerned by the gift's extravagant nature. Jen, he continued quietly. This is too much. How did you afford this? But what occurred next really stunned me. Jenny looked at me triumphantly and said, See, this is how you show love, not with some cheap crafts and a trip to the woods. Her words struck deep, and I felt embarrassed in front of all of our guests. The room became uncomfortably quiet, and our friends shifted nervously, unsure where to look. Warren eventually spoke up, his voice strained with rage. Jenny, that is enough. Your actions are improper and you should go. Jenny's face was distorted with wrath. She threw the keys at Warren's chest before stumbling towards me, pointing an accusatory finger. You, she muttered, have turned him against me. You are ruining our family. She stormed out, knocking over a vase of flowers and slammed the door so hard that a picture fell from the wall. The gathering soon dispersed after that, with guests making embarrassing excuses to go early. I was left standing in our living room, surrounded by half-finished food and deflated balloons, feeling completely dejected. Warren and I had a long, emotional chat late into the night after everyone else had left. He apologized for not standing up to Jenny sooner and pledged to establish clearer limits with her. We agreed that Jenny's behavior was harmful and that we needed to minimize our interactions with her for the sake of our marriage. But as I looked into Warren's eyes, I could sense the sorrow and turmoil. How could I ask him to choose between his wife and his sister, who had given so much for him? The next day, Warren called Jenny to discuss what had transpired. He informed her that her acts were inappropriate and that she needed to apologize to me if she wanted to remain a part of our life. Jenny refused, claiming she had done nothing wrong and that I was causing difficulties in their family. I'm the only real family you have left, Warren, she added, her voice full with sorrow. Don't let her take that away from you. We've reached an impasse. Warren is caught between his feelings for me and his commitment to his sister. I don't want to force him to make a decision, but I can't keep living with the continual stress and drama. I'm thinking about suggesting that we move to a different city to get some distance, but I'm concerned about Warren's reaction. Will he consider it an ultimatum? Will this merely bring him closer to Jenny? I adore my husband and want to make our marriage work, but I'm beginning to worry if it's feasible with Jenny's frequent intervention. Am I overreacting? Should I work harder to reconcile with Jenny for Warren's sake, or should I take more drastic measures to protect our relationship? Any advice is much appreciated. I feel like I'm drowning in a sea of family drama, and I'm not sure how to get back to shore. Update. It has been almost a month since my original post, and I wanted to provide an update on Jenny's situation. A lot has happened, and I'm still trying to digest it all. Thank you to everyone who gave me advice and support. It helped me get through this difficult period. Following my previous essay, Warren and I discussed Jenny's behavior and its influence on our marriage numerous times more. We decided to take a break from Jenny for a while to focus on our relationship. Warren committed to minimize his contact with her and to always communicate with me before making any plans that involved his sister. It was not an easy decision for him, and I could feel the guilt weighing on him, but he saw that it was vital for our marriage. For the first few weeks, everything was peaceful. Jenny seemed to respect our boundaries, and Warren and I were spending some much-needed quality time together. We resumed regular date evenings, which we hadn't done in months due to Jenny's frequent interruptions. We even began organizing a vacation for just the two of us. A hiking trip through multiple national parks, which we had discussed since we first started dating but had never found the time for. For the first time in a long time, I felt optimistic about the future. However, roughly 3 weeks after Warren's birthday party, events took an unexpected turn. It was a quiet Sunday evening, and Warren and I were watching a movie on the couch when his phone called. Mrs. Johnson, Jenny's neighbor, was identified on the caller ID. Warren replied, his brow pinched with anxiety. Warren's face lost color as I watched, and he jumped up abruptly, nearly knocking over his glass of wine. "We'll be right there," he stated, his voice cracking. He turned to me, his eyes wide with horror. "Jenny has been in a vehicle accident. She is at St. Mary's Hospital." The drive to the hospital was tense. Warren held the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white while I attempted to obtain additional information from Mrs. Johnson over the phone. Jenny was driving home from a bar when she lost control of her vehicle and smashed into a tree. The police suspected she was driving under the influence. We arrived at the hospital and found Jenny in the emergency department. She was conscious but definitely in pain, with her right arm in a temporary cast and tiny wounds on her face from the smashed windshield. When she spotted Warren, she burst into tears and reached for him with her good arm. "I'm so sorry," she wailed as Warren gently embraced her. I botched up so badly. I stood awkwardly to the side, divided between sorrow for Jenny's situation and annoyance that yet another crisis had interrupted our lives. The doctor informed us that Jenny had been fortunate. Aside from a fractured arm and some cuts and bruises, she had no serious injuries. However, she would require someone to care for her for a few weeks while her arm healed. Warren offered to take care of her before I could even think about what that meant. "She can stay with us," he added, looking at me pleadingly. "Just till she gets back on her feet. We cannot leave her alone like this." I wanted to object and remind him of our commitment to keep boundaries, but how could I say no in this situation? I reluctantly nodded in agreement. Jenny moved in with us the next day, and it's been a nightmare ever since. She continuously demands Warren's attention, phoning him for everything. "Warren, can you help me with my pillows? Warren, I need a glass of water. Warren, can you change the channel for me?" It's as if she's returned to a defenseless child, and Warren is only too willing to play the role of protecting Big Brother. She complains about everything. "Nancy, the stuff you cook is too spicy. Don't you realize I have a delicate stomach? The way you've set up the guest room, the sun comes in too bright in the morning. Can't you get some better curtains?" And just about anything else she can think of. I try to be patient, reminding myself that she is injured and likely in pain, but it is wearing me down. The worst part is that I am beginning to suspect Jenny isn't as helpless as she claims to be. I've noticed her using her damaged arm normally when she thinks no one is looking, like reaching for the TV remote or adjusting her hair. But the moment Warren enters the room, she returns to wincing and gripping her arm as if it were made of glass. When I conveyed this to Warren, he accused me of being neurotic and uncaring. "She's hurt, Nancy," he replied, his voice tight and frustrated. "Why can't you just be supportive?" I felt crazy. Was I truly being unreasonable, or was Jenny manipulating us both? Things escalated last night when I overheard Jenny on the phone with a buddy. I hadn't intended to eavesdrop, but as I walked past the guest room to do laundry, I heard Jenny's voice, which was especially energetic and enthusiastic. Curiosity got the best of me, so I stopped outside the door to listen. "Girl, you wouldn't believe how well this is working out," Jenny said, laughing. "I have Warren waiting for me hand and foot. He's so concerned about me that it's almost too simple." She paused to listen to her friend's response. "The arm? Oh, it scarcely hurts anymore, but they don't need to know, do they? I believe I can stretch this out for at least another month. Maybe by then I'll be able to convince Warren that he's far better off with his real family." I felt like I had been hit in the stomach. All of my concerns were confirmed in the worst conceivable way. Jenny wasn't simply taking advantage of the circumstance, she was deliberately attempting to build a wedge between Warren and myself. I am at a loss on what to do. I tried to tell Warren what I heard, but he didn't believe me. He thinks I'm just trying to get rid of Jenny, and that my animosity for her is clouding my judgment. "Why would she lie about being hurt?" he said, his voice filled with mistrust. "That doesn't make any sense, Nancy. I feel insane in my own home, watching this lady influence my husband and destroy our marriage. The vacation we had planned seems like a distant memory now. Instead of wandering through gorgeous scenery, I'm stuck in a house with a lady who appears determined to destroy my life. I'm thinking about taking a few days off to clear my mind, possibly staying with my friend Lisa, but I'm concerned about leaving Warren alone with Jenny and her influence. What if I return to discover she has entirely turned him against me? I love my spouse, but I'm beginning to question if our marriage will survive this. How can we move forward if he does not believe me? How do I compete with the bond he has with Jenny? Any advice is much appreciated. I feel like I've reached the end of my rope and have no idea what to do next. Update 2. It's been 2 months since my previous report, and Jenny's situation has taken an unexpected turn. I'd like to thank everyone who gave advice and support. It really helped me get through this difficult period. After my last update, I was at my wit's end. I couldn't continue to watch Jenny damage my marriage. Taking several commenters' advice, I decided to collect actual evidence of Jenny's deceit. I know many of you recommended against it, citing privacy concerns, but I felt I had no choice. I installed a covert camera in the living room. I told myself it was only for a few days, just to show to Warren that I wasn't hallucinating. Within 2 days, I had convincing evidence that Jenny used her wounded arm regularly when Warren was not around. I caught her lifting heavy books, fixing her hair, and even opening a tight jar lid with the arm she said was too painful to use. The true shock came when I recorded a chat between Jenny and one of her friends who had come to visit. Jenny blatantly criticized me, calling me gullible and boasting about how simple it was to deceive Warren. "He's always been a sucker for the damsel in distress act," she told me. "A few crocodile tears and he's putty in my hands." I felt horrible listening to it, but I knew I'd found the proof I needed. With shaking hands, I transferred the tape to a USB drive and waited for Warren to return home from work. When Warren came, I sat down and told him what I'd done. He was outraged at first, accusing me of invading Jenny's privacy, but I begged him to simply view the films. His face turned pale as he saw a film of Jenny using her arm normally and heard her taunting words. "I can't believe this," he said quietly, his voice scratchy. "Why would she do this?" I had no response for him, but I felt a flood of relief wash over me. Warren could now see the truth. Warren confronted Jenny in the evening. The subsequent argument was fierce and difficult to watch. Jenny first denied everything and accused me of doctoring the footage. But when confronted with overwhelming facts, she broke down. Jenny acknowledged, through tears, misrepresenting her injuries and attempting to separate us. She discussed feeling abandoned when Warren married and her dread of losing the only family she had left. Jenny had never shown me this side of herself before: vulnerable, terrified, and extremely insecure. Warren, split between rage and concern for his sister, urged Jenny to leave our home immediately. She begged him to let her stay, pledging to reform, but Warren stood firm. "You need help, Jenny," he continued, his tone stern but not harsh. "Professional assistance, and until you respect our marriage, you are not welcome here." Jenny left that night, amidst tears and recriminations. The house felt strangely quiet after she left. Warren and I sat in silence for a long time, absorbing the day's events. Warren finally turned to me and apologized. "I'm so sorry, Nancy," he replied, his eyes overflowing with regret. "I should have believed you. I should have seen what was happening." We talked late into the night about trust, family, and the future of our marriage. Things remained tense for a few weeks, but they gradually improved. Warren went to therapy to sort out his confusing feelings about his relationship with Jenny. We also began couples counseling to repair the trust that had been broken and enhance our marriage. Then, approximately a month ago, we got unexpected news. Jenny had been arrested for fraud. Apparently, she was running a small-scale Ponzi scheme, defrauding friends and acquaintances of their cash. The classic automobile she had given Warren for his birthday. Warren was heartbroken after purchasing the item with stolen money. He felt bad for not recognizing the warning flags earlier and for maybe enabling Jenny's actions over time. I did my best to encourage him during this difficult period, reminding him that Jenny's actions were entirely her responsibility. We've now discovered that Jenny's deceptive behavior stretched far beyond our relationship. She had a history of abusing people's trust and sympathy for personal benefit. It was a difficult realization, but it helped Warren recognize that her actions were not his fault. This entire event has put our marriage to the test. There are times when trust difficulties return, when one of us retreats into our own thoughts, but we're working through them together. We've learned to communicate more openly and rely on one another for assistance. We're still processing what's happened, but we're doing it together. Warren has resolved to entirely remove himself from Jenny until she seeks proper help and makes sincere atonement. It's been difficult for him, but he knows it's vital for our well-being. We're focusing on healing and progress. We postponed our vacation and are looking forward to spending uninterrupted time together. There is still a long road ahead of us, but for the first time in a long time, I am cautiously hopeful about our prospects. Update 3. It has been 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some concluding thoughts on this chapter of our lives. Warren and I have made considerable progress in our relationship. Couples counseling has been really beneficial, teaching us improved communication skills and how to support one another during stressful situations. We had to relearn how to trust one another, which wasn't always easy. There have been disagreements, times of uncertainty, and nights spent sleeping in different rooms. However, we've rediscovered the love and connection that brought us together in the first place. Warren has persisted with his individual treatment, working through his complex emotions toward Jenny and his background. He's had to face some difficult truths about his childhood and the relationship between him and his sister. It has been terrible for him, but I can see him becoming stronger and more self-aware with each passing week. Jenny pleaded guilty to the fraud charges and is now serving a 2-year sentence. Warren debated whether or not to attend her trial, but eventually opted against it. He wrote her a letter explaining his decision and expressing his hope that she will utilize this time to ponder and seek the assistance she requires. We haven't had direct touch with Jenny since she went to prison, but we did get a letter from her about a month ago. She apologized for her behavior and the anguish she had caused us. She added that she has been diagnosed with many mental health concerns and is now receiving appropriate therapy. While the letter appears earnest, Warren and I are wary about getting our hopes up. We've agreed that if Jenny displays persistent long-term change following her release, we'll explore gradually restoring our relationship with her. But for now, we're keeping our distance. On a bright side, Warren and I finally went on the vacation we had planned. We spent 2 weeks hiking and camping in national parks, reconnecting with each other and the mutual interests that drew us together in the beginning. There were tensions, old scars emerging in quiet moments around the campfire, but also moments of joy, of rediscovering one another away from the stresses of our daily lives. We've also taken important decisions about our future. We plan to relocate to a new city next year for a fresh start. Warren has been offered an excellent work opportunity, and I'm delighted about the prospects for my freelance business in a new market. We both believe that a change of environment will allow us to put the turmoil of the past behind us and focus on creating our lives together. Looking back, I realize how this difficult experience has ultimately enhanced our marriage. We've learned to stand together in the face of external demands, to instinctively trust each other, and to prioritize our partnership at all times. Warren has developed tremendously, learning to set appropriate boundaries and spot manipulative conduct, even from close ones. Personally, I've learned to trust my instincts and speak up when something feels wrong. I've also discovered the value of patience and understanding, particularly when dealing with complex family dynamics. Although the trip has been arduous, I am grateful for where it has taken us. Warren and I are closer than ever, and we are cautiously optimistic about what the future holds. We know there will always be obstacles, but we are better prepared to confront them together. Thank you to everyone who has followed our story and provided support along the way. Your guidance and encouragement have been helpful. Here is to fresh beginnings and healthier connections. Husband wet the bed, threw a tantrum and is now refusing to speak to me after I told our daughter the truth. I'm feeling confused and isolated. This morning, I, 28F, woke up because the sheets I was sleeping on were damp. I believed our 6-year-old daughter had been in an accident, but to my amazement, it was not her. My husband had wet the bed. After showering, I woke him up and informed him what had happened. He initially denied it, but eventually acknowledged he had peed the bed. He sprang out of bed, horrified, and began ripping off the blankets. Because our kid was still asleep on the opposite side, he couldn't get them off, which I found amusing. He became angry and told me it wasn't amusing, so I stopped. The only thing his yanking off the sheets did was wake up our daughter, who was perplexed and inquired what was going on. He didn't say anything and kept fumbling with the sheets. When he didn't respond, I informed her that he had wet the bed. He froze and gave me an odd expression, like if he was about to cry or something. Our daughter inquired why he had soiled the bed, and because he was still silent, I calmly explained that accidents do happen. He just stood there, staring at me with a lethal expression. I am not exaggerating when I say he looked at me with utter hatred. I've never been terrified of him, but for a moment, I thought he was going to hit me. Then he dropped the bedding on the floor, exited the room and locked himself in the bathroom for nearly 45 minutes. When he came out, he quickly changed and went, saying, "You can take her to school." He did not even look at me. I was annoyed by his behavior, but I let it go since I didn't want to dispute with him when he was in such a foul attitude. However, when I returned home from work, he was still brooding and ignored me. I was still annoyed by his conduct, so I told him to get over it. That wetting the bed wasn't the end of the world, and stop taking it out on me. At this point, he accused me of humiliating him in front of our daughter. I thought that claim completely ludicrous on so many levels, so I furiously reminded him that he disgraced himself by wetting the bed, not I. He did not take it well, shouted at me and walked off to his computer. Now he won't talk to me, and I'm bewildered. I believe he was the one who acted inappropriately and immaturely, and I do not believe I did anything wrong. Maybe my last comment was harsh, but I believe he deserved it. Still, I'm wondering if I was too mean. Edit 1. I simply wanted to clarify that I did not advise our daughter to be mean or disgrace my husband. I informed her since I didn't know what else to say and it was very evident what had occurred. I felt it was best to be honest. I didn't say it in a humiliating way, but rather casually and without making a huge issue about it. I didn't expect my hubby to feel this horrible about it. Edit 2. For whatever reason, someone shared a link to a claim about my husband having cancer, which is false. Neither my husband nor I have cancer. Update 1. I reviewed my original post and realized that I needed to elaborate before providing an update. I felt empathy and cared for my hubby. I spoke gently to him after waking him up. However, his reaction caught me off guard and it couldn't have taken more than a minute for him to hop out of bed and lock himself in the bathroom. After that, I thought it was best to leave him alone. I realize I was wrong for informing our child, but I didn't do it to be mean or embarrass him. It was a stupid and terrible decision, and I regret it. Furthermore, It is difficult to show someone you care while they are being neglected. I contacted him after he left to see if he was okay, but he left it as read. I inquired again when I came home, but there was still no response. I asked if we could discuss it. Again, no reaction. I asked if he could explain why he was so angry with me, but he didn't say anything. I gave up and went to prepare dinner. After supper, I implored him to quit ignoring me. No response. When I inquired if he wanted me to leave, he said, "You can stay, I don't care." So I asked him again whether he'd stop ignoring me if I stayed, and when he answered no, I was done. While I don't think it's fair to ignore someone like that, I know I handled it horribly, and I feel terrible for being so nasty to him. Anyway, I texted him early this morning to apologize and to see if he was available to talk after work. Around midday he texted me okay. We met at home, and he was obviously cool and spoke little. I apologized for everything, for laughing, for informing our child, for asking him to get over it, and for the most shameful part, telling him he disgraced himself. He remained silent the entire time, and after I finished, he just questioned why I had told our child. I explained, and then we sat in silence for what seemed like eternity. Then unexpectedly, he said, "I scared you, right?" I told him that short and he did. He claimed he could feel it. I inquired what caused him to react so aggressively, but he didn't know. He simply said he panicked when he realized he had soiled the bed, and it grew worse when I told our child. He stated he was furious with me for it. I apologize again for making him feel this way, and he apologized for scaring me. I'm not going to go over everything we said after that. It was a long conversation. To summarize, neither of us is pleased with how we behaved, and we both apologized for it. He wasn't as outraged as I had assumed about my laughter, but we agreed I shouldn't have informed our child. However, he is no longer upset about it and does not consider it to be a significant concern anymore. We both agreed that he shouldn't have neglected me in that manner, and I handled it horribly and harshly. We have accepted each other's apologies, but I still feel guilty about being so rude to him. Update 2. To begin with, because there were questions regarding why my husband peed the bed while sober, I attempted to persuade him to see a doctor after so many of you suggested it. But he flatly refused, stating it was meaningless because they would do nothing regardless. He's wet the bed once before, and both times he was weary and stressed out. So that could have been the cause. I'm not sure. This is becoming long, so if you simply want to read about my spouse divorcing me, you can stop right now. My second post was composed shortly after I had apologized. Based on the initial replies to my first post, I assumed that I must be a bad person and felt sorry for him. But to be honest, I never thought my original actions were particularly awful, and I still don't. That is not to say that I did not deserve some of the hate I received. I certainly did, but some of it was simply filthy, and some of the things I was reviled for never occurred, save in the minds of commenters. I felt terrible since the effect of my actions was so dreadful, despite the fact that I had no intention of hurting him. So the apology was genuine, and by the time of the second post, I was relieved we were on speaking terms and hoped we could put this behind us. It turned out that I couldn't. Shortly after, I realized I was still concerned by his actions. I also began to receive more remarks from people who noticed problems with his behavior, which I appreciate because it confirmed to me that it was most likely serious. What I purposefully left out of my first post in order to get unbiased feedback was the fact that my hubby can be unstable at times. He can be immature and sensitive, struggles to regulate his emotions, particularly rage, and is sometimes difficult to understand. It's probably due to mental health concerns, which isn't fair to him, and I feel terrible about it. But sometimes I just find him annoying and exhausting. I guess I was called out for it in my first post. He'd been in contact with a mental health team for years, but if they hadn't prescribed his prescriptions, he would have stopped seeing them long ago. Anyway, I was getting weary of constantly catering to his mood swings and failing to confront his concerns. So his exaggerated and, in my mind, threatening reaction to our child peeing the bed and me notifying him felt like too much, even though I knew he was hurt. As I mentioned, I had never been intimidated by him before, so it bothered me, even though he did nothing. I tried to talk to him about what happened again, particularly why he became so angry that I felt intimidated. I even questioned him whether it had anything to do with him peeing the bed as a child, based on some suggestions in the comments about him being shamed for it. He simply stated that it did not, and it was evident that he did not want to discuss any of it, so I did not press. He's tough to talk to about feelings or relationship concerns, which may be really irritating for me. To be honest, I had some reservations about staying in this marriage, but they were not severe at the moment. Then around a week before Christmas, he made an unexpected suicide attempt, which was unfortunately not his first. I didn't see it coming and I still feel terrible about it, probably always will. His recall of the preceding hours is hazy, but he insists that he did not mean to harm himself when he left our house that night. But I should have known. It was bad, and we didn't know if he'd make it or in what condition. Fortunately, he lived, but with no long-term consequences. The aftermath was terrible, and when he returned home, he was really ill, lethargic for weeks. The quick answer to why he did it is that he obviously had an excessive amount of anxiety that he wanted to escape, along with his occasional complete lack of impulse control. He made it obvious that it had nothing to do with anything I had done. I had no idea how horrible he was feeling because he did not inform me or anyone else. It's very difficult to help him when he won't tell us how he feels. It terrified me, and it scared him as well, to the point where he knew he needed more support. He's taken it more seriously than he ever has before. When he was offered therapy, he accepted. Now that the wait time is ludicrous, he will begin in October. In the interim, he has been visiting a nurse and a psychiatrist. By April, he was back to normal and he returned to work in early May. Then we discovered I was pregnant. It was unintentional and the result of a birth control error on our part. Despite all of the obvious reasons why we should have terminated the pregnancy, we chose to continue with it. We didn't take this decision lightly, but it was what we wanted. I should mention that he was a complete mess throughout my first pregnancy, and the second, we have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, was equally difficult for him. But for some reason that escapes me now, we expected things to be different this time around. And it was for a time. At 12 weeks, we discovered that there were actually 2 babies. I know it's bad, but I'd be lying if I said we were delighted about it at first. However, by that time, we had already decided to have a baby, so we both agreed to proceed with it. After digesting the news, we became quite enthused about it. I'm 23 weeks pregnant and things had been going well until yesterday. When he arrived home from work, he was unhappy. I assumed he had a hard day at work, but when I questioned about it, he responded with an angry diatribe about how dumb we were for having the babies and how we should have terminated them. I was stunned, and when I asked why he was saying that and pointed out that it wasn't a good thing to say, he just said, "Well, you asked, and it's what I feel." I didn't want to talk to him while he was like that, so I told him we'd talk later, when the kids were asleep. When they were done, I asked him what it was all about and where it came from. He said he didn't know, like he does when he doesn't want to discuss something. I tried to push a little but went nowhere. I was frustrated and told him it wasn't fair to say such things and then refused to discuss them. He remained silent for a long time before saying, "Expletive this," and locking himself in the restroom. When he came out, he appeared depressed. I inquired whether he was all right, and he indicated he needed some air. I assured him it was all right to feel sad. However, he objected and vehemently stated that he was not sad. I know I should have let him go, but I had a horrible feeling. I requested him to remain, but he didn't like it and screamed that he didn't want to expletive stay, before slamming the door so violently that the kids woke up. After he departed, all I could do was tend to the children, pretend everything was well and hope he returned safely. I was very worried. When the kids fell back asleep, I contacted him to see if he was okay, and then I cried. He responded almost immediately with, "I'm okay. I'll be home at 5, sorry. I love you." Which relieved some of my anxiety, but I remained unhappy and angry. He returned shortly afterwards, definitely high but calmer. He is not addicted but he does use it occasionally. When he noticed I was crying, he apologized. I told him I wasn't good with him treating me that way, and we had the same talk we'd had before. Him apologizing and me explaining how hurt I was. At that point, I realized I wasn't even angry anymore, though I probably should have been. I simply asked him not to run away like that again. He said he wouldn't, but deep down I know he will. We went to bed after that, but I was unable to sleep. To be honest, I haven't felt fantastic today. I'm terrified, disappointed and feel extremely dumb. When my husband arrived home today, he was in a better mood. He was such a sweetheart. He even spoke to me. He apologized for yesterday and expressed disappointment in himself for his actions. He stated he's been working so hard to act like a normal person, his words, and is weary of failing all the time. I know he's trying and doesn't always fail, so I advised him not to be too hard on himself. I asked how he was feeling, and he replied that he wasn't feeling well, but he couldn't clarify. When I inquired how horrible not well was, he stated it wasn't too bad and I shouldn't worry. He promised to let me know if things grew worse, but I'm not sure I can trust him. I'm terrified he'll crash again, and I'm not sure I have the energy for it right now. I am quite sure he doesn't either. I really hope that treatment will benefit him, but I'm not sure what we can realistically anticipate from it. What if it doesn't make any difference? What should we do then? I know my posts have primarily focused on the negative, so it may not appear that way, but I adore my hubby. I don't want to live without him, but I also don't want to live this way. I'm not sure, maybe I'm just excessively sensitive right now, being pregnant and all.